You think you know the story of Britain's darkest hour? The Battle of Britain raging overhead, the threat of German invasion looming across the Channel, Churchill's defiant speeches echoing through bomb-damaged streets. But what if I told you that while the world watched Spitfires duel with Messerschmitts, a secret army of farmers, shopkeepers, and retired soldiers was preparing to fight the Wehrmacht with weapons so crude that German intelligence dismissed them as harmless toys? This is the story they don't want you to know. The story of the Home Guard's sticky bomb, a weapon so simple that it was made in garden sheds and kitchen workshops, yet so effective that it could destroy the most advanced German tanks. How a group of British civilians, armed with nothing but determination and household chemicals, created an improvised explosive that terrified German commanders more than any official military weapon. How the men Hitler's propaganda machine mocked as Dad's army became the nightmare that kept Wehrmacht planners awake at night. But this isn't just another tale of British pluck or wartime ingenuity. This is the untold story of how Captain Maurice Wilks, a retired engineer from Coventry, and his team of unlikely saboteurs turned everyday materials into instruments of resistance that could stop a panzer division in its tracks. How they discovered that sometimes the most effective weapons are the ones your enemy never sees coming. Welcome to the summer of 1940, when invasion seemed inevitable and conventional forces seemed inadequate, when ordinary citizens became extraordinary warriors, and when the fate of Britain hung in the balance between official military doctrine and the improvised weapons of men who refused to surrender their homeland without a fight. Stay with me, because what you're about to discover will challenge everything you thought you knew about asymmetric warfare, the power of citizen resistance, and the price of underestimating an enemy who has nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. July 15, 1940, Coventry, England. Captain Maurice Wilks stands in his garden shed, surrounded by the tools and materials that once helped him design aircraft engines, now repurposed for a far more desperate mission, creating weapons that might stop German tanks from rolling through his hometown. At 58, Wilks is officially too old for active military service, but his 40 years as an engineer have given him something more valuable than youth: the knowledge of how things work, how they break, and how to make them break when you need them to. Before the war, he designed engines for Rolls-Royce, creating the power plants that now drive the Spitfires and Hurricanes defending British skies. Now he's using those same skills to create weapons for the local defense volunteers, soon to be renamed the Home Guard, the civilian force that represents Britain's last line of defense against invasion. The situation is desperate in ways that the British public doesn't fully understand. The evacuation from Dunkirk has saved the British Expeditionary Force, but it has also left them without most of their heavy equipment: tanks, artillery, anti-tank guns. Nearly everything needed to stop a German invasion has been abandoned on French beaches. The Home Guard has been issued rifles, some dating back to the Boer War, and told to prepare for the defense of Britain with weapons that would have been obsolete in 1918. "Maurice, you really think this contraption will work?" asked Sergeant Major Harold Thompson, a Great War veteran who commands the local Home Guard unit. Thompson is examining one of Wilks' improvised weapons with the skeptical eye of a man who has seen too many military innovations fail when they're needed most. "It'll work, Harry," Wilks replies, holding up what appears to be nothing more than a glass jar filled with a dark, sticky substance. "The question is whether we can make enough of them before Jerry decides to pay us a visit." The weapon that Wilks has developed is deceptively simple: a glass container filled with a mixture of plastic explosive, adhesive, and metal fragments, designed to stick to the armor of German tanks and detonate with enough force to penetrate their hulls. The British military has been experimenting with similar devices, but their official sticky bomb is complex, expensive, and difficult to manufacture in the quantities needed for widespread distribution. Wilks's version is different: crude, improvised, and made entirely from materials that can be obtained without official authorization or military supply chains. The explosive is created from agricultural chemicals that any farmer can purchase legally. The adhesive comes from industrial compounds that are readily available in any manufacturing town. The metal fragments are salvaged from scrapyards and machine shops that dot the industrial landscape of Coventry. The beauty of it, Wilkes explains to Thompson as he demonstrates the weapon's construction, is that Jerry won't see it coming. Their intelligence reports probably mention the official sticky bomb, but they don't know about our homemade version. They'll be expecting conventional anti-tank weapons, not improvised explosives made in garden sheds. The improvised nature of Wilkes's weapons reflects the broader reality of Britain's situation in the summer of 1940. With conventional military resources stretched to the breaking point, the defense of the homeland increasingly depends on the ingenuity and determination of ordinary citizens who are willing to fight with whatever tools they can create or acquire. We're not trying to win a conventional war, Wilkes tells the group of Home Guard volunteers who have gathered in his workshop to learn about the improvised weapons. We're trying to make invasion so costly and difficult that Jerry decides it's not worth the effort. The strategy that emerges from this thinking is fundamentally different from conventional military doctrine. Instead of trying to stop German forces in pitched battles, the Home Guard will use hit-and-run tactics, sabotage, and improvised weapons to create chaos and confusion that will disrupt German operations and buy time for regular forces to respond. Think of yourselves as a wasp's nest, Wilkes explains to his volunteers. Individually, you might not be able to kill a bear, but collectively you can make its life so miserable that it decides to look for easier prey elsewhere. The volunteers who gather in Wilkes' workshop represent a cross-section of British society. Farmers who understand explosives from quarrying operations, mechanics who know how machinery works and how to break it, chemists who can create compounds that don't exist in any military manual, and shopkeepers who have networks of contacts that can provide materials and information. What we lack in military training, we make up for in local knowledge and civilian skills, observes Dr. James Chen, a retired chemistry professor who has become Wilkes' chief assistant in developing improvised explosives. We know this terrain better than any German commander, and we understand how to use civilian infrastructure in ways that military planners never consider. The development of the improvised sticky bomb becomes a community project that involves dozens of volunteers working in secret workshops scattered across Coventry and the surrounding countryside. Each location specializes in different aspects of the weapon's construction, creating a distributed manufacturing network that would be difficult for German intelligence to detect or destroy. We're like a medieval guild system, explains Robert Martinez, a machinist who has been producing the metal components for the bombs. Each workshop has its own specialty, but no single location has all the knowledge or materials needed to produce the complete weapon. The security measures surrounding the sticky bomb project reflect the volunteers' understanding that their effectiveness depends on maintaining secrecy about their capabilities and methods. German intelligence is known to be active in Britain, and any information about improvised weapons could lead to countermeasures that would reduce their effectiveness. Loose lips sink ships, and loose lips also get Home Guard units wiped out, warns Thompson during one of the security briefings. What we're doing here stays here. Your wives don't know, your children don't know, your drinking buddies don't know. But maintaining secrecy while coordinating a distributed manufacturing operation creates its own challenges. Communications must be secure, materials must be transported without attracting attention, and quality control must be maintained across multiple production sites. The solution comes from the volunteers' civilian backgrounds and professional networks. Messages are passed through existing business relationships, materials are transported using commercial vehicles and routes, and quality control is maintained through a system of cross-training that ensures multiple people understand each aspect of the production process. We're hiding in plain sight, observes Danny Washington, a postal worker who has become the communication coordinator for the project. German agents are looking for military installations and official weapons factories. They're not paying attention to farmers buying fertilizer or mechanics ordering scrap metal. The first test of Wilkes' improvised sticky bomb takes place in a remote quarry outside Coventry, using a captured German tank that has been obtained through official channels for training purposes. The test is conducted in absolute secrecy, with only the core development team present to observe the results. Target is a Panzer III standard German medium tank Wilkes announces as he prepares to demonstrate his weapon. Armor thickness approximately 30 millimeters on the sides, 50 millimeters on the front. Our bomb should be able to penetrate either location. The improvised sticky bomb that Wilkes attaches to the tank's side armor looks like nothing more than a large jar of jam, but the explosion that follows demonstrates its devastating effectiveness. The shaped charge effect created by the weapon's design focuses the explosive force into a narrow jet that punches through the tank's armor like a hot knife through butter. Penetration achieved, reports Michael O'Brien, a metallurgist who has been analyzing the weapon's effectiveness. The explosion created a hole approximately 4 inches in diameter through the side armor. In a real engagement, that would be sufficient to disable the tank and probably kill or wound the crew. The success of the test validates Wilkes's design and proves that improvised weapons can be effective against modern military equipment. But it also raises questions about how the weapons will be deployed and whether Home Guard volunteers will be able to use them effectively under combat conditions. Getting close enough to a German tank to attach one of these bombs is going to require either tremendous courage or tremendous stupidity, observes Thompson during the post-test analysis. Probably both. The tactical challenges of using sticky bombs lead to the development of new training programs and deployment strategies that take advantage of the Home Guard's local knowledge and civilian backgrounds. We're not going to fight like regular soldiers, Wilkes explains to the volunteers during a tactical briefing. We're going to fight like partisans, using stealth, surprise, and intimate knowledge of the local terrain to get close to German vehicles without being detected. The training that follows combines military tactics with civilian skills, teaching volunteers how to move unseen through familiar territory, how to approach armored vehicles without being detected, and how to use improvised weapons effectively under stress. The key is patience, explains Tommy Kowalski, a poacher who has been recruited to teach stealth techniques. You wait for the right moment, you move when the enemy isn't looking, and you strike when they least expect it. But the most important aspect of the training is psychological preparation for the reality of using improvised weapons against professional soldiers who are better armed, better trained, and better equipped than any Home Guard unit. We're not trying to be hero, Wilkes tells his volunteers during one of their final training sessions. We're trying to be effective, hit hard, hit fast, and disappear before the enemy can respond. Live to fight another day. The psychological preparation becomes even more important when intelligence reports begin to suggest that German invasion plans are becoming more concrete and that the Home Guard may soon face the test of actual combat. Jerry's been conducting reconnaissance flights over our area, reports David Park, a Royal Observer Corps volunteer who has been tracking German air activity. They're photographing bridges, roads, and industrial facilities. That suggests they're planning something more than just bombing raids. The prospect of imminent invasion transforms the sticky bomb project from an interesting experiment into a matter of life and death for the volunteers and their families. The weapons they've been developing in secret may soon be the only thing standing between their homes and German occupation. This is it, gentlemen, Wilkes tells his team during what may be their final planning meeting. Everything we've worked for, everything we've prepared for is about to be put to the test. Let's make sure Jerry gets a proper British welcome. The stage is set for a confrontation that will test whether improvised weapons and civilian determination can stand against the most professional military force in the world, and whether the men that German propaganda dismisses as harmless amateurs can prove that sometimes the most dangerous enemies are the ones you underestimate. September 17th, 1940. The German invasion of Britain, codenamed Operation Sea Lion, has been postponed indefinitely due to the Luftwaffe's failure to achieve air superiority over the Channel. But the Home Guard doesn't know this, and neither do the German reconnaissance teams that have been infiltrating the British coast to gather intelligence for the planned invasion. Captain Wilkes receives word through official channels that German agents have been spotted in the Coventry area, conducting what appears to be detailed reconnaissance of industrial facilities and transportation networks. It's exactly the kind of preliminary activity that would precede an invasion, and it gives the Home Guard their first opportunity to test their improvised weapons against real enemies. Intelligence reports suggest a team of German agents landed near Felixstowe 3 days ago, explains Colonel Patricia Williams, the regular Army liaison officer, who coordinates between official forces and Home Guard units. They've been moving inland, probably heading for the Midlands industrial area. Your sector is directly in their path. The prospect of facing actual German agents transforms the Home Guard's training exercises into operational planning sessions. The volunteers who have been practicing with improvised weapons in secret workshops now have to prepare for real combat against professional soldiers who won't hesitate to kill anyone who gets in their way. This isn't a drill anymore, Thompson tells his unit during an emergency briefing. These are real Germans with real weapons, and they're here to gather information that could help Jerry invade our homeland. We're going to stop them. But stopping professional German agents with improvised weapons and civilian volunteers requires tactics that go far beyond anything taught in conventional military training. The Home Guard will have to use their local knowledge, civilian skills, and improvised equipment to overcome enemies who are better trained and better equipped. We know this area better than any German agent ever could, observes Dr. Chen during the tactical planning session. We know which roads they'll use, which buildings they'll target, which routes they'll take to avoid detection. That knowledge is our greatest advantage. The plan that emerges from the Home Guard's discussions involves using their intimate knowledge of local terrain to predict the German agents' movements and position improvised weapons along their likely routes. It's a strategy that depends on patience, careful observation, and the ability to remain hidden until the moment of attack. We're going to turn our own neighborhood into a trap, Wilkes explains to his volunteers. Every bridge, every crossroads, every building that Jerry might find interesting is going to have a nasty surprise waiting for him. The deployment of sticky bombs and other improvised weapons requires careful coordination between multiple Home Guard units and civilian volunteers who aren't part of the official organization but who have been helping with the weapons development program. Mrs. Sarah Walsh has been watching the roads from her cottage for 3 days, reports Washington during one of the coordination meetings. She's got a perfect view of the main route from the coast, and she knows how to use the telephone system to pass information without attracting attention. The civilian intelligence network that supports the Home Guard's operations represents one of their greatest advantages over conventional military forces. Shopkeepers, postal workers, farmers, and housewives create an observation system that covers every road, path, and building in the area. Jerry might be able to fool military patrols, observes Martinez during a briefing on the intelligence network, but he can't fool Mrs. Henderson, who knows every person who belongs in this village and every person who doesn't. The first contact with German agents comes on September 20th, when a team of 3 men in civilian clothes attempts to photograph the Coventry aircraft factories that produce engines for RAF fighters. They're spotted by Home Guard observers who have been maintaining surveillance on all critical industrial facilities. 3 men, civilian clothes, foreign accents, asking too many questions about the Rolls-Royce plant, reports O'Brien, who has been coordinating surveillance activities. They're carrying cameras and what appears to be radio equipment. Definitely not tourists. The German agents' behavior confirms that they're conducting reconnaissance for military purposes, but it also reveals that they're following predictable patterns that the Home Guard can exploit. Their interest in industrial facilities makes their likely routes and destinations easy to predict. They'll want to photograph the aircraft factories, the railway junction, and probably the fuel depot, Wilkes predicts during an emergency planning session. That means they'll have to use the main roads and approach the facilities from positions that give them clear lines of sight. The tactical situation that develops over the next 48 hours represents the first real test of the Home Guard's improvised weapons and unconventional tactics. The German agents are professional soldiers who understand surveillance and counter-surveillance techniques, but they're operating in unfamiliar territory against enemies they don't know exist. Jerry thinks he's dealing with regular military forces and civilian police, Thompson observes, as the Home Guard positions its forces. He doesn't know about our improvised weapons or our civilian intelligence network. That's going to be his downfall. The first engagement occurs when the German agents attempt to approach the Rolls-Royce factory through a wooded area that the Home Guard has been watching for 3 days. The agents move with professional skill, using cover and concealment techniques that would fool most military observers. But they're not dealing with military observers. They're dealing with Kowalski, the poacher, who has been watching these woods for game animals for over 20 years and who can detect movement that would be invisible to trained soldiers. 3 men, moving single file, approximately 200 meters from the factory perimeter, Kowalski reports through the civilian telephone network that the Home Guard has established for communications. They're good, but they don't know the terrain like I do. The ambush that follows demonstrates the effectiveness of combining local knowledge with improvised weapons. The German agents are channeled into a position where Wilkes and 2 volunteers can approach unseen, using their sticky bombs against what they assume are the agents' vehicles. But the Germans aren't using vehicles, they're on foot, which means the sticky bombs have to be used as conventional explosives rather than anti-tank weapons. It's a tactical situation that the Home Guard hasn't specifically trained for, requiring improvisation and adaptation under combat conditions. Change of plans, Wilkes whispers to his team as they observe the German agents. No vehicles to attack, so we'll have to use the bombs as booby traps. Set them on the path they'll use to retreat, then force them to run into the explosions. The modified tactics require the Home Guard volunteers to think like guerrilla fighters rather than conventional soldiers, using deception and misdirection to force their enemies into positions where improvised weapons can be effective. Dr. Chen, can you create a distraction that will make Jerry think he's been spotted by regular patrols? Wilkes asks through the communication network. We need them to retreat along the path where we've positioned the bombs. The distraction that Chen creates involves using his knowledge of chemistry to produce smoke and noise that simulates a military patrol approaching the German position. It's exactly the kind of improvised solution that characterizes the Home Guard's approach to tactical problems. Smoke grenades made from agricultural chemicals, noisemakers constructed from pipe and firecrackers, Chen explains as he prepares his deception. Jerry will think he's facing a full military patrol and retreat along his planned escape route. The deception works perfectly, with the German agents withdrawing along the exact path where Wilkes has positioned his improvised explosives. The sticky bombs, triggered by tripwires made from fishing line, detonate with devastating effect as the agents attempt to escape. 2 down, 1 wounded and captured, Thompson reports after the engagement. The improvised weapons worked exactly as designed. Jerry never knew what hit him. The success of the first engagement validates the Home Guard's tactics and proves that improvised weapons can be effective against professional soldiers when used with proper planning and local knowledge. But it also reveals the psychological impact of using such weapons on the volunteers themselves. It's different from what we expected, admits Washington during the post-engagement debriefing. In training, we were thinking about stopping tanks and fighting a conventional invasion. This was more like assassination. It doesn't feel like soldiering. The psychological challenges of guerrilla warfare become an important factor in the Home Guard's continued operations, as volunteers struggle with the moral and emotional implications of using improvised weapons against human targets. What we're doing is necessary, Wilkes tells his volunteers during a discussion about the ethical aspects of their operations. These men were here to gather information that would help Jerry invade our homes and kill our families. We stopped them from completing that mission. But the success of the Home Guard's operations also attracts unwanted attention from German intelligence, which begins to realize that British resistance capabilities are more sophisticated than previously believed. Intercepted German radio traffic suggests they're revising their assessment of British civilian resistance, reports Colonel Williams during a briefing on enemy intelligence activities. They're starting to take the Home Guard seriously as a military threat. The increased German attention leads to more sophisticated reconnaissance efforts and counterintelligence operations designed to identify and neutralize Home Guard capabilities. The volunteers who thought they were fighting a secret war suddenly find themselves the targets of professional intelligence operations. Jerry's getting smarter, observes Park during an analysis of recent German activities. They're using better camouflage, more sophisticated communication equipment, and they're avoiding the obvious routes and targets that we've been watching. The escalation of the intelligence war forces the Home Guard to adapt their tactics and improve their security measures, while continuing to develop new improvised weapons that can counter increasingly sophisticated German operations. "We're in an arms race now," Wilkes tells his team during a planning session for new weapons development. "Jerry's learning from his mistakes, so we have to stay ahead of him. New weapons, new tactics, new ways of thinking about this fight. The evolution of the conflict between the Home Guard and German intelligence represents a microcosm of the broader war, where technological innovation and tactical adaptation determine success or failure. But it also demonstrates the unique advantages that civilian resistance forces possess when fighting on their home territory. We're not just defending military positions," Thompson observes during one of their tactical discussions. "We're defending our homes, our families, our way of life. That gives us motivation that no professional soldier can match." The motivation that Thompson describes becomes increasingly important as the conflict intensifies and the stakes continue to rise, testing whether civilian determination and improvised weapons can continue to prevail against increasingly sophisticated professional opposition. October 31, 1940. The Battle of Britain has been won, the immediate threat of invasion has passed, but the secret war between the Home Guard and German intelligence continues with an intensity that surprises both sides. What began as a simple reconnaissance mission has evolved into a comprehensive German effort to understand and neutralize British civilian resistance capabilities. The success of Wilkes's improvised weapons and the effectiveness of Home Guard tactics have convinced German commanders that civilian resistance could pose a serious threat to any future invasion attempt. Intelligence reports indicate that Jerry has assigned a full Abwehr team to investigate Home Guard capabilities, Colonel Williams tells Wilkes during a classified briefing. "They're not just gathering information anymore. They're actively trying to penetrate and destroy your organization." The escalation represents both a validation of the Home Guard's effectiveness and a new level of danger for the volunteers who have been operating in relative security. Professional German intelligence agents are far more dangerous than the reconnaissance teams they've been fighting, and they have resources and training that could neutralize the Home Guard's advantages. "We're moving from guerrilla warfare to counterintelligence operations," Wilkes tells his core team during an emergency meeting. "Jerry's not just trying to gather information, he's trying to destroy us from within." The German counterintelligence operation begins with attempts to infiltrate the Home Guard's civilian support network, using agents who can pass as British civilians and who understand the social dynamics of small communities. "They're good," admits Dr. Chen after analyzing reports of suspicious activities in the area. "These aren't the obvious foreigners we've been dealing with. These are people who could be your neighbors, who know how to blend in and ask the right questions without attracting attention." The infiltration attempts force the Home Guard to develop new security procedures and counterintelligence capabilities that go far beyond anything they've previously attempted. Volunteers who joined to fight tanks and invasion forces now find themselves engaged in a sophisticated intelligence war. "We need to think like spies now," observes Washington during a training session on security procedures. Dead drops, code words, compartmentalized information, background checks on new volunteers. This isn't the Home Guard we signed up for. But the transformation of the Home Guard from a military force into an intelligence organization also reveals new capabilities and advantages that the volunteers possess. Their civilian backgrounds and professional networks provide cover and resources that professional intelligence services can't match. "We have advantages that Jerry can't replicate," Martinez points out during a discussion of counterintelligence tactics. "We know everyone in this community. We have legitimate reasons to be everywhere, and we have access to information sources that no foreign agent can penetrate." The civilian intelligence network that supports the Home Guard's operations becomes increasingly sophisticated as the conflict evolves, developing capabilities that rival those of professional intelligence services. "Mrs. Walsh isn't just watching the roads anymore," reports O'Brien during a briefing on intelligence activities. "She's monitoring telephone conversations, tracking unusual mail deliveries, and coordinating with postal workers to identify suspicious correspondence." The expansion of civilian intelligence capabilities creates a comprehensive surveillance system that covers every aspect of community life, making it extremely difficult for German agents to operate without detection. Jerry's finding out that infiltrating a small British community is like trying to sneak into a family reunion, observes Thompson with satisfaction. Everyone knows everyone, and strangers stick out like sore thumbs. But the German response to these defensive measures involves increasingly sophisticated and dangerous operations that test the Home Guard's ability to protect both their organization and their community. The crisis comes when German agents attempt to eliminate key Home Guard leaders through targeted assassination operations, using improvised weapons that mirror the tactics the British volunteers have been employing. "They're using our own methods against us," Wilkes realizes after analyzing the remains of a bomb that was planted in his workshop. Improvised explosives, civilian disguises, local knowledge. Jerry's been studying our tactics and adapting them for his own use. The German adoption of Home Guard tactics represents both a compliment to their effectiveness and a serious escalation of the conflict. The volunteers who thought they were fighting a secret war now find themselves the targets of assassination attempts using their own methods. "This changes everything," and Thompson tells his unit during an emergency briefing. "We're not just hunting Jerry anymore, Jerry's hunting us. We need to think about personal security, family protection, and counter-assassination measures." The personal nature of the threat forces the Home Guard volunteers to confront the reality that their resistance activities have put not just themselves, but their families and communities at risk. The war that began as an abstract defense of Britain has become a very personal struggle for survival. "My wife knows something's wrong," admits Kowalski during one of their security meetings. "She's asking why I'm checking the windows every night, why I'm varying my routes to work, why I'm carrying a pistol to the grocery store." The psychological pressure of living under constant threat of assassination begins to affect the volunteers' effectiveness and morale, forcing them to develop new coping mechanisms and support systems. "We're all feeling it," Dr. Chen acknowledges during a discussion of stress management. The paranoia, the constant vigilance, the knowledge that any stranger could be an enemy agent. It's taking a toll on everyone. But the pressure also strengthens the bonds between Home Guard volunteers and their civilian supporters, creating a community-wide resistance network that's more resilient than any formal military organization. "The whole village is involved now," observes Park during an analysis of community support. "Everyone's watching for strangers. Everyone's reporting suspicious activities. Everyone's protecting the people they know are involved in resistance work." The community-wide involvement in resistance activities creates a security environment that's virtually impenetrable to German intelligence operations, but it also transforms the entire area into a legitimate military target. "Jerry's getting frustrated," reports Colonel Williams during one of her briefings on German intelligence activities. "They can't penetrate your organization, they can't eliminate your leaders, and they can't gather the information they need. They're starting to consider more drastic measures." The drastic measures that Williams refers to include the possibility of German bombing raids specifically targeted at Home Guard strongholds, or even commando raids designed to destroy resistance capabilities through direct military action. "If Jerry can't defeat us through intelligence operations, he might try to eliminate us through conventional military force," Wilkes warns his volunteers during a planning session. "We need to be prepared for everything, from assassination attempts to full-scale military assault. The preparation for escalated German operations requires the Home Guard to develop new weapons and tactics that go beyond their original anti-invasion role. They begin creating more sophisticated, improvised explosives, developing better camouflage and concealment techniques, and establishing secure communication networks that can survive military attack. "We're becoming a real resistance organization," Thompson observes as he reviews their expanded capabilities. "Not just Home Guard volunteers, but professional guerrilla fighters with the skills and equipment to conduct sustained operations against occupation forces." But the transformation of the Home Guard into a professional resistance organization also attracts the attention of British intelligence services, who begin to see the volunteers as a valuable asset for special operations. "The Special Operations Executive is interested in your improvised weapons and tactics," Colonel Williams tells Wilkes during a classified meeting. "They want to study your methods and possibly recruit some of your people for operations in occupied Europe. The recognition from professional intelligence services validates the Home Guard's innovations and proves that their improvised weapons and civilian tactics have military value beyond local defense. What we've developed here could be used to support resistance movements throughout occupied Europe, Wilkes realizes as he considers the implications of SOE interest. Our sticky bombs, our infiltration techniques, our civilian intelligence networks, they could all be adapted for use against German occupation forces. The potential for expanding Home Guard innovations to support broader resistance operations represents the ultimate validation of their approach, but it also means that some of their best people will be recruited for dangerous missions behind enemy lines. It's an honor to be asked, Dr. Chen tells Wilkes after being approached by SOE recruiters, but it also means leaving the community we've been defending and risking our lives in places where we don't have the advantages of local knowledge and civilian support. The recruitment of Home Guard volunteers for special operations creates both opportunities and challenges for the organization, as they lose experienced people while gaining recognition and resources from official military channels. We're victims of our own success, Thompson observes as he watches several of his best volunteers prepare for SOE training. We've proven that civilian resistance can be effective, so now everyone wants to use our methods and our people. The war continues to evolve, but the Home Guard's contribution to British defense capabilities has been permanently established. Their improvised weapons, civilian tactics, and community-based resistance networks become models for resistance organizations throughout occupied Europe. What we've accomplished here goes beyond just defending Coventry, Wilkes reflects, as he considers the broader impact of their work. We've proven that ordinary citizens can create extraordinary weapons, that local knowledge can overcome professional training, and that the will to resist can be more powerful than any military technology. The legacy of the Home Guard's sticky bomb program extends far beyond its immediate tactical success. The improvised weapons and civilian tactics developed by Wilkes and his volunteers influence resistance movements throughout World War II and establish principles of asymmetric warfare that remain relevant today. The lesson of the Home Guard's secret weapons isn't just about the effectiveness of improvised explosives or the importance of civilian resistance. It's about the power of ordinary people to create extraordinary solutions when their homes and families are threatened, the value of local knowledge and community networks in asymmetric warfare, and the understanding that sometimes the most effective weapons are the ones your enemy never sees coming. Wilkes and his volunteers succeeded because they refused to accept that professional military forces were inherently superior to civilian defenders, because they used their civilian skills and knowledge to create advantages that conventional military thinking couldn't anticipate, and because they understood that the will to resist could be more powerful than any weapon. The Home Guard's sticky bomb program also demonstrates the importance of innovation under pressure and the value of thinking outside conventional military doctrine when facing overwhelming odds. Their success came not from following established procedures, but from creating new solutions to unprecedented problems. Stories like this remind us that the most effective resistance often comes from those who are underestimated by their enemies, that innovation frequently emerges from necessity rather than resources, and that the courage to defend one's home can inspire creativity and determination that no professional military training can match. That's what we explore here. The moments when ordinary citizens become extraordinary warriors, when improvised weapons prove more effective than sophisticated military technology, when the determination to resist transforms communities into fortresses that no enemy can conquer. If you believe these stories matter, if you want to understand the power of citizen resistance and the importance of never underestimating those who fight for their homes, then subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell. Because there are so many more stories like this one waiting to be told with the respect and complexity they deserve. You won't want to miss what we discover next.